Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the One and O podcast. I'm Avery Hill.
I'm Lexi Linderman.
I'm Will Horseman.
I bet you didn't expect to see us on Zoom. Obviously, big day. Penn State fired James Franklin after losing three straight games. As you can tell, this is very new to us. I've been, working, getting everything done since it happened. This is a lot. This is probably one of the craziest times in Penn State history. Guys, I'm gonna just turn it to you. I mean, what are your initial thoughts?
I think my mind has kind of been all over the place since it happened, kind of as expected. I think the biggest thing I think about is when I started covering this team, two, last 2 Aprils ago, the blue, whatever, you know what I'm saying. But like when I started covering this team, I never thought that I would be covering a different head coach ever. I thought James Franklin's job was one of the safest in college football, and I think that just really shows how bad of a collapse this has been for Penn State. I mean, they did everything possible to put themselves in a position to win the national championship this season, and you have become the worst team in the Big Ten. And at that point, there is no one else to blame besides James Franklin because the talent is there. Like Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Drew Aller, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. I could list a bunch of names, the entire offensive line. And obviously, there are certain guys who really, haven't stepped up to the occasion. Some guys are playing a little under the expectations that were set for them. But that's going to happen. That what matters is the coaches have to get the best out of them, and clearly that was not happening. And I also think James Franklin's buyout is now officially the second most in college football history. I don't know. I think there's reports that it's going to be paid annually, so they'll be paying him until 2031. I'm not like 100% sure about that, but I do know that I don't think Pat Kraft makes this decision if he's not confident in the amount of money that the athletic program has, because that is a lot of money. You could set the program back years and years and years just by paying $50 million to literally
Yeah.
anyone, and you're paying it up front to James Franklin to get him out of Happy Valley. So I think that that says a lot about where the athletic program is at. I'm very interested to see. Pat Kraft said he's going to be leading the search in the statement they released today. I'm interested to see who they go after. We released a list of names that we think they should go after, could go after. We had interim coach Terry Smith on there as one. I think Smith was the perfect choice for an interim for the rest of the season. I mean, he's the longest tenured assistant. Um, the associate head coach, cornerbacks coach, one of the head recruiters of the program. I think there was kind of really no one else for the job. I'm interested to see how he does the rest of the year, but I think Kraft is going to go after someone pretty big. I think this is a very important hire for Penn State going forward because if you miss on this hire, you could set this program back another 10 years. Like Franklin got the program out of the hole. He brought it to great status, but he's not gotten it to elite. And so I think they need to find someone who's going to get this program to elite and not set it back. Um, I know Matt Rule is being talked about a lot. Do I think that's the best option? Probably not. I think you would just be hiring another James Franklin, and I don't really think that's the best idea considering where we're at today. So I just think there's a lot to think about, but I think initially my first reaction is that if they were really disappointed in how the season turned out, and they were at the point where there was genuinely no one else to blame besides James Franklin. I think you look at his Northwestern post-game press conference, it just felt like he was never going to be back up there again. The vibe in the room, he gave the shortest opening statement I have ever heard from him in his 12 years here. Every question, he did not seem like he wanted to answer it. The players all seemed checked out. The biggest thing I think for me as well is Drew Aller's out for the season. That's your starting quarterback. That is your two-year captain. And your players are finding out for the first time that he's out for the season when the media is asking them how they feel about him being hurt. I think that says a lot about where the program is at, where the locker room is at, and I think that this was just a decision that needed to be made.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like surprised that like actually like it happened after like all these years of kind of not to say that like it was not a real take, but it's like so many people after like big game losses wanted James Franklin to be fired, but it feels like it only like legitimately became the correct take in like the recent weeks, and still just feels surreal that like really only like just over 2 weeks ago, Penn State was about to play Oregon in the whiteout. And they even took a lead in overtime and looked like could have gotten like their first like top 10 wins since the playoffs last year. But really what I've been like thinking about for like Penn State in the James Franklin era for like since the game ended yesterday is was the block six against Ohio State worth it? because I feel like James Franklin would have been fired after, or maybe not directly after the Ohio State game in 2016, but soon after, because there was a lot of like fire Franklin rumblings back then. And obviously that's before like 10 win seasons, Big Ten championship, all that success. So so I really just feel like was beating Ohio State that year, winning the Big Ten championship, and like everything else that like Penn State has accomplished in last like 8 years or so. It's like when I'm thinking for Penn State, like was that all worth it? And I mean, I feel like that's probably needs a whole another like conversation, but like I think I mean, the program accomplished a lot, but it's like it just feels weird that like this is like kind of how it ended. Because, I mean, if you remember in like 2014, 2015, like Penn State losing like at home to like as an unranked team to like a team like Northwestern, that just feels exactly like where this program was in 2014 or so. So it's just really just surreal that it's like Franklin is no longer the coach.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack here. I think the biggest thing for me is looking at yesterday. I think even when I got to the grounds of Beaver Stadium, the parking lot, the one that they put me in way further than where I needed to be, I will just say, very random, but I had to throw that in there. It just felt different. I think that was before the game. You're watching team arrivals and everything, and obviously we didn't expect as big of a turnout as the whiteout. One is a homecoming game. Two was against Northwestern, and three, fans were already in an uproar from the past two games. I think when you look at that, and even like I saw the recruits, there weren't that many recruits there. Like you could probably count on two hands how many recruits that I saw personally on that, walk through on team arrival specifically. Obviously, I wasn't able to catch after the game. Maybe that changed, but the reality is things felt different. You look around Beaver Stadium through the game, and Beaver Stadium just felt lifeless. Obviously, there were moments where the fans tried to come to life. There were moments where the fans really tried to support the team, but there was also the down moments. Obviously, James Franklin was booed when he came out for what ended up being his last time stepping on the field as Penn State's head coach. Um, Drew Eiler got booed when he threw the interception. Like there were moments like that, but even then, it felt as if Beaver Stadium could only give but so much, whether positive or negative, simply because everyone was tired. Again, this is something you saw after the game. James Franklin walks in, gives first of all, comes through the tunnel, which almost missed, but I just hear a lot of booing. I knew immediately James Franklin is currently walking through the tunnel. They obviously booed him out of the place. He walks and he's like stone face is the best way I can describe it. Stoic, however you want to say it. He had no reaction. You could tell that it was just over. Um, I know that some people thought that James Franklin would last until the end of the season, but I didn't think it was possible. I think at some point it's a time to walk away. I think with every game, James Franklin had a chance to just make his resume and make his legacy, which again he has built it up. You can talk about not winning the big games, but you also need to look at he did win a Big Ten championship. Obviously, again there is a cry for more, but at the end of the day, he made Penn State a consistent 10-win team that was something that was used against Penn State, but it is something that a lot of coaches weren't able to do. So at that point, if you just keep going week by week and you're losing these games and you keep losing, because I didn't see Penn State winning the next three games, as we talked about, going to Iowa at night. I wrote that off about 2 weeks ago. Going to Ohio State, I wrote that off about 4 years ago. And going to Indiana or playing Indiana at home was not going to happen. It was not going to work. So it just had to happen. I mean, again, he walks in and you can kind of listen to his responses. He basically ignored every question. He did the "it's all on me" again, but that was it. That is kind of it takes me back to even Monday where he forgot to give a scouting report for Northwestern. Like he sat there and gave his whole opening statement. He always gives a scouting report. He always talks about how well he knows the coach, obviously Coach Braun. He does that every single week. He did not do that. He didn't give a list of players that we could tweet out that he basically said to watch out for, whether they were actually good at football or not. That none of that happened, and it just felt like the writing was on the wall. You could see it in the players' reactions. Deni Dennis Sutton was asked about him, and he simply said, like, I mean, there's not really much I can do for him. Like, what do you mean? You're on the team. What like? you can, there's always something you can, as players, you represent your head coach. If you're not performing well, your head coach is the one that's going to be on the hot seat for it. And obviously that's what happened. But I mean, I think overall, a lot of it yesterday was really, it felt like the end. I think when you end coaching tenures, especially long term tenures, 12 years, usually everything is lost. The fan base was already lost. Administration, obviously, we don't know exactly where they were, but clearly it was getting there at some point. Um, he himself was lost. He seemed tired just in these last 2 weeks. He seemed like he was out of it. Seemed like he had nothing else to give to this program. And then the last thing is the players. I think that's something very important because players are, James Franklin has been known as this guy who's like a player's coach who players love to play for. Like you can see it all through social media right now. Like as of right now, I'm looking at a tweet from Noah Kane about just how he's always indebted to Coach Franklin. Like players love to play for Coach Franklin. So when I don't know if that's not no longer the case, I don't think that's true. But when players are no longer in a position where they want to put their back against the wall and defend James Franklin, he's lost the locker room and it's over. And that's what happened. Again, Penn State fired James Franklin today. Terry Smith will be stepping into the interim coach. But again, I do want to go back to where this program goes. Like I said, I think you brought up a big point that like Penn State cannot miss on this hire. You get the wrong guy, you can be in a cycle where you're getting a new head coach, what, every 2, 3, depending how bad the next coach is. You could be getting a head coach every year, every 2 years. You see how many, look at different schools, Texas A&M having multiple coaches on their books. Look around the country. There are so many teams that now have multiple coaches that they're trying to pay out all at once because they can't figure it out. I mean, guys, where do you think Penn State has to go from this? I mean, obviously, we did list a lot of coaching candidates, which you guys can check out in its entirety on psucollegian.com. psucollegian.com, click the football section. You will see it right there. 6 coaching candidates for you guys to look into. Guys, is there anyone specifically that you think that Penn State has to look into or just a direction in general in terms of where Penn State must go?
I think the biggest one for me is Kurt Signetti. I think you look at Indiana historically, one of the worst programs in the history of college football.
The worst.
The worst, like so bad at football. And literally his first year on the job, they go 11-1 the regular season. They make the college football playoffs. Sure, they lose to Notre Dame, but still, it's his first season as a head coach, and he made it to the playoffs sooner than James Franklin ever could. It took James Franklin 11 years. I mean, obviously, different circumstances, an expanded field, whatever, but still, an incredible achievements for Signetti. And then this year, they just beat Oregon. Penn State did not beat Oregon. Kirk Cincinnati just beat Oregon, and that's a more of a signature win than James Franklin I think has probably ever had. I mean, you look at 2016 Ohio State, but like that was when they were the underdog. Whatever, I took a blocked field goal. Like James Franklin has never gone on the road against a team ranked higher and beat them by 10 points. That has absolutely never happened, at least in my memory. So I think Kurt Signetti needs to be the first phone call that Pat Kraft makes. I think if you want someone who's going to turn this program from what it is right now to something a lot better overnight, Kurt Signetti is your guy. I think he's proven he can use the transfer portal really well. I think that's something that Penn State fans have been waiting for a while. I think James Franklin's kind of getting on that path, but now like obviously he's gone, so there a lot of the people out there are going to be using the transfer portal in a way that James Franklin never has. Because I also think you have to look at, and I wrote about kind of what happens next following this, checking out pccollegian.com. But one of the things I brought up was roster retention. I think all of these guys loved James Franklin. Like that is very evident in the way they're posting on social media. It's always evident in the way they spoke about him at media. Even yesterday, TJ Shanahan gave a really long answer when asked about him, about how much he loves Franklin. The guys just always seemed like they were playing for themselves, but also for James Franklin. And I think he's going to coach somewhere else next year. I think maybe he'll take a year off. I don't really think so because he's getting a lot of money from Penn State, obviously, as we talked about. But I think he's coaching somewhere else next year. And I think it's probably in the SEC. And there are a lot of really good players left on this roster that have eligibility left. And I think a few names that come to mind, Chaz Coleman, Tony Rojas, Amari Campbell, Max Granville, who's hurt this year. There's a lot of also young talent too. Chaz Coleman, I mentioned, was one of them, but like Jameer Joseph, Darius Dixon, guys like that. all those guys have a lot of eligibility left, and all of those guys were recruited by Franklin and love Franklin. So I could see a lot of those guys going wherever Franklin goes, and I would not be surprised if that happened. I think this could just be a complete like different Penn State team when we're talking preseason next year, just because of that. And so I think whoever they hire needs to be one that is either going to bring a lot of their roster with them, is going to attack the transfer portal head on, because they're also losing recruits left and right. Keemon Spell, Leighton Von Brandt, Khalil Taylor, like they're all gone already. LeVar Keys, like they
Yeah,
all announced their decommitments either today or yesterday, or not yesterday. 2 days. Khalil was
Friday.
Friday, and then the rest have been today. And I think like I could see more 2026 guys going off the board as well. I think so. Whoever you bring in, like the transfer portal needs to hit, and I think Kurt Signetti has proven that he can do that. So I think that is the first phone call if I'm Pat Kraft that I make. Other than that, I kind of look at some younger guys at smaller schools, like maybe Kenny Dillingham. I think could be a good hire. Bring him to a higher program, see what he does. He's a little more unproven, but also took Arizona State to the college football playoff last year, when they really weren't supposed to be anything. So I think there's a couple names out there, but I think the one I really look at is Kurt Signetti. I am a bit anti Matt Rule just because of what I said. I feel like you'd just be hiring another James Franklin. I think I saw somewhere he's 2-21 against top 10 opponents as a college football head coach. That is the way James
He
Franklin
won a
wants
close
to.
game yesterday. We can mention that. He won a close game. It was against Maryland. The Maryland that does falls off the f face of the earth after bye weeks, but he did win a close game yesterday, as he pointed out.
So I do, yeah. So I do think that Matt Rule. I know there's connections with Pat Kraft. I know he used to play at Penn State, but I just don't. I think you would be hiring another James Franklin, and I do not think that would be a good hire for Penn State. So I really like. I just keep coming back to Kurt Cincinnati. I think you get on the phone. I mean, long term, Penn State's going to have way more resources than Indiana is. Like, if Kurt Cincinnati wants to coach an elite program, he should want to come to Penn State if they want him. So.
I mean, yeah, I also think that like Kurt Signetti, he's got to be like one of the first phone calls. But it's like another guy, if Signetti says no or whatever, it's like another guy Kraft has to like at least like inquiry on is like Nick Saban. I mean, obviously we all know who he is. I mean, he's one of the best college football coaches of all time. So many like national championship at Alabama. I feel like gotta at least maybe look into that, see if maybe he has an interest in coming back into coaching, and maybe he would sees Penn State as an opportunity to come back. But otherwise, I think getting Manny Diaz, I wouldn't mind that for Penn State because I mean that's a guy obviously they have familiarity with him. I mean he was the defensive coordinator a couple of years ago. Feels like always like all of his like his defenses were always great. So maybe if he's head coach, like his defense, he can just be really just in full control of the defense and then left leave the offense just in full control of the offensive coordinator. So it's like I can see something working out there, even though I will acknowledge that Manny Diaz does not have that much like success as a head coach. I mean, Miami, that was a little not to say disaster, but it wasn't great. Duke, he's doing pretty well. He's had a 9-4 season last year. They're currently at 4-2 this season, so kind of for Duke standards, I'd say those are some pretty good success. But I mean, yeah, I think he again like what Lexi says, like Kurt Signetti just has to be that first choice because I mean he's a proven winner. I mean he said like Google me, I'm a winner. He is a winner. He wins football games and
I did Google him, by the way. I just wanted to say that I Googled him, and I think that checks out. Keep going.
yes, I mean he wins football games. Enough said. Like that's got to be the hire.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, Will. My thing is, I feel like if you're Pat Kraft, you were doing yourself, you were doing Penn State, you were doing Nearly Bendapudi, you were doing the Happy Valley Faithful, you were doing. We're going to throw even Drew Aller in there, even though he won't even be involved in this. You will be doing everyone a disservice if you do not call the greatest coach in all of college football in Nick Saban. There is absolutely no way you don't at least make the call. He's been to Penn State twice in the past 2 years, with College Game Day. I've heard that he's been at practice before, which is something, maybe he has a connection with the players. Obviously, I'm not sure, but he could have that connection with the players. And he's Nick freaking Saban. Like, I think if Nick Saban wants to get back into coaching, one, as of right now, unless I don't know, some random guy you call up that's like 80 years old steps into the league, By the time next season comes, he will be the oldest coach in college football. Bill Belichick is currently the oldest, but one, I don't expect him to have a job by the time Nick Saban takes over, if Nick Saban were to take over, and he is about 5.5 months younger than Nick Saban. So I think if you're Penn State, you got to make the call. I think, if you talk Nick Saban again, 7 national championships between Alabama and LSU, the most of any coach on the FBS level. Many and many wins. I think he's about sixth, seventh all time wins. That was not on purpose, I promise. But he's around there for all time wins in FBS history. Nick Saban obviously has been known as a tremendous recruiter, a tremendous motivator, and I think he checks all the boxes that James Franklin couldn't check. Obviously, that's winning big games, but I think especially when you look at the latter part of the season or the latter part of James Franklin's tenure at Penn State, in specific this last year, blocking out the noise. How many times have you seen Nick Saban go to a press conference and he's like, we don't pay attention to the rat poison. Like, he gives all his little sayings or whatever. Like, but he's really gotten guys to buy in. If you look at how many guys after playing at Alabama are just so much better for themselves, whether it's just as a football player, as a human, as a father at some point, they have become so much better in life because partly because of Nick Saban. I think that's something you have to explore. But again, he is currently retired, so we can't act like that's like the biggest option, even though I think we could agree that'll probably be the best option in terms of getting a guy that can win a national championship. I think you get Nick Saban. I think some other guys, again, Kurt Signetti is one that you look at. I think if you want to keep those familial ties, obviously get. I think Terry Smith automatically does get an interview for the head coaching job so far as he wants it. I mean, I think him taking the interim head coaching job and him being the associate head coach before this is a sign that he obviously would be willing to take that. I know a couple years ago he said that Penn State is a program that he hopes he's able to retire at, and this is his chance. If Terry Smith can take over and like obviously expectations aren't too high for him right now, the team's morale is down. But say he shocks everyone. Say I'm not going to say win out because that's not going to happen. But say that he's able to, get Penn State to a bowl game, get guys on, make Ethan Grunkemeyer look good, which is something we'll touch on a little bit later. If he's able to do all of that, that might lead him into the job, and that might be again the last place that he coaches. He might take this thing all the way. I don't know if he's the guy that can bring Penn State a national championship. Obviously, we haven't seen him as a head coach. We don't know, but what we do know about Terry Smith is players love him, coaches love him, the Penn State community love him. He's a former player. He's been as a coach at Penn State since James Franklin's tenure, and his rap sheet is long. Cornerbacks coach, you can look at Joey Porter. You can look at Kalen King that first year, maybe not the second year. I don't think that helps his case.
Keyword first.
Or his final year. You can obviously look at AJ Harris again outside of last night, which he obviously might be hurt because he did not play after that last play. But the point is his rap sheet is long. Again, you're going to want to get a guy that is going to be a big time name, probably, but I think more importantly, a guy that fits into the Penn State culture. I think that you're not looking for a guy to change the whole program because again, James Franklin was one to win from going to a national championship game. I don't think that's a recipe for success, but I think when you talk about roster retention, when you talk about getting the recruits online, things like that, which again, Terry Smith went with James Franklin on these recruiting trips. He was, one of the recruiting coordinators, if not the recruiting coordinator. So there's going to be a lot of questions for Pat Kraft to answer in terms of who he hires, but I think it goes without saying that he absolutely cannot mess this up.
Yeah, I also think you mentioned Nick Saban has retired. I also want to touch on Urban Meyer. I think that is another guy that you kind of have to call if you're Pat Kraft just to see. I mean, he's obviously with Fox on Big Noon, but he's also been at Penn State a lot recently. Him and James Franklin have a lot of respect for each other, always have. And so I think that's another guy that you just kind of got to pick up the phone and call. But I also think you talking about Terry Smith, it's really interesting. I was kind of thinking about this earlier too, is a lot of these assistants are here because they love James Franklin as well. Like it's kind of the same thing with the players. Like Chuck Losey has been with James Franklin since Vanderbilt, and he is I would say, one of the best strength coach in the country. And I would be very surprised if he stays at Penn State because when we talked to him, I think it was in August, June, this summer, we talked to him this summer,
Yeah.
and he basically said that he has the utmost loyalty to James Franklin. He doesn't ever want to leave Penn State as so long James Franklin is here. So I think you could see him leaving. There's a bunch of Penn State lettermen that I honestly don't know if you leave. I think Ty Howell's job is very safe. I think Phil Trautwein's job is pretty safe regardless of what's happening this year with the offensive line. I still think he's one of the better offensive line coaches in the country. I think barring Anthony Poindexter wanting to leave, I would say his job is pretty safe. And if Terry Smith wants to stay at Penn State, I think his job is very safe. But there are a bunch of other, assistants that I'm kind of like, what's going to happen to them? What, like, are they going to leave at James Franklin? Are they going to stay at Penn State because they want to be at Penn State? Are they going to get cleaned out by whoever comes in next? I think that is another very interesting piece of this because James Franklin said this is the best personnel he's ever had at Penn State, and that includes the assistant coaches. So clearly, he saw something in them. We'll see if they stick around, but I also think that was an issue to bring up. And then Avery, you kind of talk about Ethan Grunkemeyer. I do just want to touch on Geralder a little bit. He's obviously out for the season, we learned yesterday, but this is honestly just the worst way possible for him to go out. I think he is one of those guys that when you look back on his Penn State career, you are going to have no idea what to think about it. I mean, he took them to their first playoff. He took them to a drive away from that championship, and then of course he also ended that drive with an interception. He never had a big game win, but I also read somewhere, I don't know how like actual true this is, that like a small part of the reason for firing James Franklin was that he could not develop Duraller. And I think that if that is the case, that is a very valid reason to have and the reasons for firing him. I think he was the second highest recruit in Penn State history behind Christian Hackenberg. He ended up kind of like a Christian Hackenberg in a sense, but I think that to me, Drew Aller has always had so much potential, so much natural talent. You kind of see it when you watch him throw the football, just kind of how easy it looks for him to throw it 50 yards downfield. And I don't think that was ever really perfected by this coaching staff. I don't think they ever really took his potential and honed in on it and made him what he could be. And so it kind of feels like he was failed a little bit by his coaching staff. He's still going to go down logistically, statistically, as one of the better quarterbacks in Penn State history. But you also just it just sucks to see him end his career in that way with that injury. And I just feel like this staff like could have done better by him. They could have done better by so many guys on this roster. Denied Dennis Sutton, Katron Alex Singleton, all of them are kind of like, well, we came back. Why? It's like they're getting money. Like, but Nick Singleton said last year he did not come back for the money. He came back to win a national championship. Like, how do you think he feels now? His head coach is gone. His running backs coach that was here his entire career has been gone for a while. Like, it's just there. You like think you forget like because Ethan Grunkemeyer is now the starting quarterback. There are still a lot of players on this roster that came back to win a national championship, and now it's like, well, like what are we doing? What are we here for? We're 3-3, and we might not even make a bowl. So, but also I think the funniest thing possible, I just want to add this, is if Terry Smith beat Ohio State on his first try. Anyways, I think that would be probably the most hilarious day in Penn State history ever. So
I'll add to that. The last time Penn State beat Ohio State on the road was with an interim coach in Tom Bradley in 2011. So there's
Yeah,
that.
you're on one right there. I
Yeah.
think it's actually really funny because what we like were what I was thinking, and I saw, a lot of other people. For instance, former Daily Collegian football editor Seth Engel mentioned it as well, that it would have been funny if James Franklin made it to the end of the season but beat Ohio State to go out, win a big game, still get fired because of everything going on. So I think it takes another level if Terry Smith does it on his first try. I think there's plenty of hilarious circumstances that could follow that can make it even more funnier. But I think overall, I mean, as you guys said, like it is a lot of change going on. Obviously, that also brings me to Ethan Gargemeyer because now you're putting him in a situation where he's got a new head coach all of a sudden. Obviously, Terry again is a respected guy around the building. Obviously is known, within the team. Like, so I have no doubt that he's had, you know, dealings with him. But at the end of the day, Terry's his biggest focus really goes on being a cornerbacks coach. So having to translate that to your new quarterback, him trying to adjust to that, him trying to adjust to all of the drama that surrounds, your head coach being fired. Like you can look at the offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki. You can even look on the defensive side with Jim Knowles. Like who even knows how long they stick around? I think for Jim Knowles, that is about a $3 million decision, which makes a big difference. But I mean, who's to say that Terry Smith doesn't say, I want to go make a change. I'm getting a new offensive coordinator. I want to, I think if he was to make that change on the defensive side, that would be bringing up Anthony Poindexter, making him defensive coordinator. Obviously, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but all of these could happen. No one expected Penn State to be in this position right now, and they're in this position. Obviously, everyone expected a national championship. Everyone expected them to, at the very least, make the playoffs. That's way out the picture. A bowl game is honestly at this point basically out the picture because even if they make it to a bowl game, I mean, 90% of the team is probably going to opt out. If you look at Marshall last season, they didn't even have enough players to play in the bowl game because of how many players opted out. So even a bowl game could be out of the picture. Again, back to Ethan Grunkelmeyer. I mean, I think this is kind of definitely a hard situation for him to be thrown into. His first game full as a starter, 8 p.m. Iowa. Is there a time difference? I don't know. But either way, night
Yeah,
game.
well, yeah, so it's 7 p.m. Eastern, so it'll be like I think 6 p.m. there. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Either I think it's 7-8, but either way, night
Never mind.
game, Iowa, Kinnick Stadium. We have seen what Penn State backup quarterbacks have done at Iowa. Obviously, Taquan Roberson, Sean Clifford had the misfortune of being hurt in that moment as well. So that I mean that's going to be hard for him. But I want to shift back to James Franklin. I think the biggest question right now is not if, but when. He's obviously going to get another head coaching job. Again, this is early. We haven't heard anything about who he's talking to, where he's going to go, if he's going to take a year off. But what do you guys think? I'm gonna toss to you. Do you think James Franklin, is coaching on a team next year? And do you have any guesses on where that would be?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think he definitely is. Oh, okay.
I think I feel like he has to like take a year. I feel like he has to take a year off because I mean, if you just notice him in like these press conferences lately, like I just feel like he just looks like just so distraught, so like just emotionally drained from having to deal with like all the pressure that he's kind of had being the head coach at a high end school in Penn State. So I mean, I obviously I don't know anything, but it's like I feel like if I was James Franklin, I'd feel like I'd have to take a year off. And obviously now with the buyout and all that, it's like I don't think money is necessarily a concern for him, so he can definitely afford taking a year off. But otherwise, like where he could land, I would be I think any like re really any power conference team that has a head coach opening would be willing to go after him, and really even I wouldn't even be too surprised if maybe a bit of a lower end power conference team goes after James Franklin, even if they have to like fire their head coach to do so, because I mean for all the like hate that James Franklin gets, he has proven that he can win like 10 plus games a season. Obviously this year that's far from the case, but I think someone is going to see the potential there and maybe think that they can get Franklin and maybe have Franklin get over the hump. So I mean we'll see, but I think he definitely lands somewhere in a like a power conference team.
Yeah, I think my vote for funniest thing ever would be if Penn State hired Clark Lee and then James Franklin went back to Vanderbilt. I think that would genuinely be the hilarious thing to happen ever in college football. Do I think that's gonna happen? No, but I think that would be hilarious. I think that James Franklin probably will be coaching next year. I think he is such a guy that like coaching is like his life. Like he genuinely like 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. like he is coaching. Like whether that's at home watching film, in the locker room or in Lash talking to the guys, talking with the staff, like it is his life. I cannot see him taking a break from that. I mean, like maybe he wants to spend time with his family. Obviously, this year has been really draining for him, and like there's no denying that. And in that sense, I feel a little bad for him. But then I look at how much money he's getting. I'm like, well, I don't feel bad for you anymore. But that's a whole different conversation. But I really can't see him taking a year off. I don't know. It just feels wrong. It would just feel wrong, honestly, to not have James Franklin coaching college football. I feel like he's become such a staple face, infamously, in some ways. And so I think I definitely see him coaching next year. Where that is, I'm not sure. I'm like 99% sure it would be the SEC. I cannot see him coaching in the Big Ten for a long time. I don't think he ever wants to step foot in Beaver Stadium again if he doesn't have to. And I also think, just kind of touching on that, I think the way this relationship soured so fast was kind of just like crazy to see. I mean, obviously people have been discontent about his ability to never win a big game. Whether that's an ability or a flaw, I don't know. But like I think there's been so much discontent, but it really all just like boiled completely over. I mean, yeah, sure, there was a dude literally screaming at Franklin from like the stands that he's a fraud and he's getting chased out by security. Like there's like I've never seen something so hostile. I've never seen someone be booed so loudly. So I don't think he ever wants to come back to Beaver Stadium. So I don't think he is ever going to be coaching in the Big Ten for a long time, unless maybe Penn State fans forget, but I don't think they ever will. I mean, this was a very long relationship, a very tiring relationship. So I don't think he'll be back in the Big Ten anytime soon. So I think the SEC is probably where he's going to end up. If not, maybe like the ACC, I can maybe see that, but maybe he goes to like Virginia Tech. Could we see it? I don't know. That'd be really funny. Brent Pryda, James Franklin. Um, um,
Swap, swap.
yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think I would place my bet on the SEC. I think he fits the SEC well. I think he did well at Vanderbilt when he was there. I could maybe see him going to Florida, something like that, if they don't fire. Isn't it Billy Napier? Yeah.
Yeah, Billy Napier. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think the SEC is probably where he's gonna end up.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, it probably has to be SEC. I think the only way you go maybe ACC is if he's going to go to like a Florida State. Florida State's been, you think they pulled it together and then they start falling apart. Like so, Mike Norvell could literally see himself on the chopping block soon as well. So I mean that might be Florida State's out. They might be like, we want James Franklin. We want to bring back the football that Florida State's used to seeing with the guys like Jameis Winston. I mean, you can even look past to the what was that 2 3 years ago where they're complaining about not getting a playoff spot when their star quarterback is out, meaning they wouldn't have a chance and the team fell apart. Anyways, that's a little bit beyond the point. But I just think it's Florida State or it's the SEC. I can't really think of any other. I don't think Clemson is a James Franklin school, and I don't know if they're going to get rid of Dabo. I think it would be really funny if he went and then he just kept Tom Allen. That would just be hilarious. But I do think SEC. Some schools I would mention. I mean, I think that Alabama, obviously, right now is not an option. Okay, and the board's there, but maybe something changes. Maybe Caden DeBoer sees another opportunity. Maybe Alabama falls apart. There are so many different options that could lead James Franklin to Alabama. Again, like James Franklin, not just Nick, when mentioning Nick Saban, he, seemed like he had a good relationship with the Penn State program as a whole, but he had a relationship with James Franklin. I think that's something that could lead to that because obviously Nick Saban is still involved with the program, even if it's not, coaching them to victory every week. Nick Saban's name is still in that building. He's still, around the program, all of that. So that could be something that happens. And I think if you look at some other teams, obviously you can look at Texas if if they want to make a change. This is one of those changes where it's like anything could happen. I leave open the possibility for, again, just like Will said, coaches or teams getting rid of their coach just to get James Franklin. I think you could see that because I think teams definitely do have some sort of hope that with even though Penn State does have pretty good resources for a power four school, they don't have the resources of a Texas. They don't have the resources of an Alabama. They don't have, the love to play for a school like that, like schools like that. So I think there is a possibility that they look into them. Again, Florida, I think is also a really good one. I think I would easily place that into a top three of where James Franklin could end up. But I think that's all good options. I think again, another one I'll throw in, if for some reason he stays in the Big Ten, USC. I think they have the resources to do it. I know it's a little bit of a wild card. I think they have the resources to do it. I think that they're not getting exactly what they want out of Lincoln Riley. Obviously, many thought the USC would be a top 10 team even last year. That didn't work. I know this year, I can't remember exactly if they're ranked right now, but USC isn't fulfilling its expectations to its fullest. Maybe they go there. Again, I don't think he stays in the Big Ten. I don't even think it's for a fact of not showing up to Beaver Stadium again because it's going to happen at some point for some reason. But I do think that James Franklin, you're going to expect him to be as motivated as ever. But I think that he ends up on a team by next year. I think that, you know, athletic directors, maybe some longtime assistant coaches that knows their job is safe. They are pounding the table to get James Franklin. They're looking to help him do something that he was never able to do at Penn State, which is win a national championship, which is, win multiple conference titles. On the national championship record, be the first black head coach to win a national championship, something that he mentioned last year with Marcus Freeman when, they squared off in the semifinals, you know, finally change the narrative on big game James. I feel like there are teams lining up to do so. I think it's just a matter of waiting. I think it's just a matter of, a matter of time before we're able to see what that is.
I mean, it would be a real full circle moment if James Franklin goes to USC after like all the rumors of him and going to taking the USC job in 2021. I mean the Clay Helton when he was kind of got fired there, it's like Frank. I think USC did kind of pursue Franklin, but then Franklin signed that 10-year contract after a 7-6 season with Penn State to a 10-year contract to that's kind of like still obviously with the buyout that's still in effect today, but I mean, yeah.
Shout out Sandy Barber. Shout out
Yes.
Sandy Barber.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if it like we could also talk about with Big Ten schools like Wisconsin, maybe. Like I don't really know. I don't know if I could see James playing on Wisconsin,
I
but it
don't
could
see
be a
it.
possibility.
I don't
Like
know.
I
I
don't
don't
know,
see
but
it.
I was thinking if you talk about Alabama, Texas, I think if James Franklin ends up at Alabama or Texas, that means Kalen DeBoer or Steve Sarkisian is on the market. And I think Kalen DeBoer, like I wrote this in our head coaching hot board, whatever you want to call it. Kalen
Where
DeBoer is
at?
literally what?
Where'd you write that at?
Oh, psucollegian.com. Click the football tab and you'll find it. But I think Kalen DeBoer is like the anti James Franklin. Like he is 17 and 3, like 18 and 3 now after yesterday against top 25 opponents. Like that is the definition of anti James Franklin. And does he lose games that maybe he's not supposed to? Maybe once in a while, but that's only been kind of like an Alabama thing. At Washington, he was very steady against top against anyone pretty much.
Granted, he was in Pac-12, but
Right, he was in the Pac-12, but that still took beating Oregon 3 times. By the way, 3 times. So I think that Kalen DeBoer, if he's on the market, would be a great hire for Penn State. The only thing I'm a little worried about is his recruiting pedigree. I think that he is like the Alabama name; it's very easy to recruit with. He's gonna have to like whoever comes in is gonna have to build Penn State's recruiting kind of back up because I think their whole recruiting was James Franklin. I think he was the face of all of it. And so I think that is kind of a job that maybe Kalen DeBoer is not necessarily fit to do, but I do think it would be a really good hire from a coaching perspective for Penn State. But yeah, this is just a crazy thing to happen. Like I know we talked preseason. Lyle said preseason, who's not here by the way. Lyle said preseason that James Franklin had one of the safest jobs in college football. And if you had told me that in 6 games into the season that he was no longer going to be the head coach of Penn State, I probably would have called you crazy. And so this is just I think that truly puts into perspective how they have just spiraled downward into like the deepest pits of like the Earth's core. Like I don't know like how this happened. Um, but clearly there was some internal issue that we'll never know about. But yeah, and I think
oh, we'll know.
I also said in the Rapid Reacts last night that all the people coming for Andy Kolnicki's job were the same people who were coming for Mike Yursic's job, and at some point, you have to put the blame on the person who is hiring these people, and that finally happened, and James Franklin's gone. And also, Penn State football posted a thank you to him, no video, no nothing, just a little graphic, turn off the replies. The relationship just seems very soured, and one that I don't know how they're gonna look back on it. I don't know how James Franklin's gonna look back on it. I don't know how Penn State's gonna look back on it. We'll find out in like a year. But yeah, just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it all. I think we can kind of wrap up there. I think, again, Penn State fired James Franklin today. The start of a new era is here for Penn State. It'll be interesting to see. Again, Penn State's mid-season, so they've got a whole half a season to go. But that's all we have for today. For more coverage, visit us at psucollegian.com. Follow us on socials. You can also check out our newsletter, which will be dropping one tomorrow and then another one on Friday. That's all we have. We will see you on the next pod, which will be later this week. This was just an emergency pod. So, again, we will see you next time.